Broadcasting from Orchard Park, New York,
and Boca Raton, Florida,
it's the Freight 360 podcast. From freight broker sales tips to sports talk, this podcast is all about helping you grow as a freight broker. We're your hosts, Nate Cross
and Benjamin Kowalski.
Let's talk freight. All right, welcome back for the final episode of 2023 of the Freight 360 podcast. If you're brand new here, please check out all of our other episodes. There's 224 in total now. Check out YouTube and everywhere on social media. Make sure to leave us comments, hit the subscribe, the bell, all that good stuff. Share us with your friends. And if you'd like to learn more about us and our content, you can always go to freight360.net and check out the Freight Broker Basics course for a full-length self-paced course on how to succeed in freight brokerage. Ben, wrapping up the year here, man. How are you doing today?
Doing well. Enjoying my semi-vacation time off between Christmas and New Year's.
Yeah, I was. So it's funny. I was like yesterday. Well, today's Wednesday as we're recording, but yesterday was the day after Christmas, and I had to hop in my office, get some stuff done. My wife's like, "I thought you were like, slow week, gonna be off this week," and I'm like, "Well, no, it's definitely slower, but there's still stuff going on." You know what I mean? Little issues pop up here and there to handle, but yeah, it's nice, man. I love this time of year. It kind of lets you reflect back on all the hard work from the whole calendar year. We're going to talk about that actually a lot today. We're going to talk about kind of the year in review and just some the state of the market and some little tips and tricks on how to go the extra mile with your customer. So, but yeah, it's a nice slow week. But and it was a weird Christmas, man. We had almost 60-degree weather here in Buffalo. There's no snow on the ground anymore. Wow. It's been mild. The last week, we have another few days of mild weather. And I think then it's going to drop down probably around New Year's into what we normally would experience for winter time. Dude, I wore shorts on Christmas. It was crazy.
That's so funny. We had the opposite. We had absolutely had two cold fronts come in over the past 2 weeks. So from the 17th or 18th, it was hitting the 60s, even in the high 50s. And it was overcast. It was funny. I was telling my dad, I was it's like Pittsburgh fall. I was basically, I'm it's 60s, 70s. The sun hasn't been out in 2 or 3 days. But for me, it was kind of nice again, because Christmas, you kind of want to sit inside. It's a little, again, I've been here for 8 or 9 years. And when it's super hot outside and the sun's shining and it's Christmas Day, you kind of don't want to be inside. You still want to go outside. So it was nice that we were all just kind of hung out at home, let Ava play with all of her toys and do a normal kind of Christmas thing where you're just kind of inside and enjoying the.
Yeah, it was funny. I was talking to my brother-in-law. Was down in Dallas, and he's like, "It's literally warmer in Buffalo than it is here in Texas right now." And I'm like, is what it is, man. I'll take it for sure. Hey, NFL update here. So this past Saturday, was it Saturday? Yeah, the Steelers game. Yep. Right, so it was an interesting. Basically, everything went the way that the Bills wanted it to. Steven, why don't you unmute yourself and hop in the conversation here, because you're a Cincy guy. But it starts off with the Steelers and the Bengals, and man, was that something?
Trash. It was just trash.
It was an entertaining game. I'll say that.
Yeah, it was.
I got excited for all of 5 seconds, and I was like, okay, I can go back to not watching this anymore.
Yeah, definitely. That game was pretty much all Steelers. So what was the final? 34-11. Yeah, it was 24-0 at halftime, Steelers. But anyway, yeah, Steelers walked away with the win there. The Bills game right afterward got me a little nervous because the Bills were down 10-0. In the second quarter, but then they quickly turned on their offense and got the ball moving and took the W. So Bills took the win and put themselves in the driver's seat to make the playoffs now. So a couple other games went the Bills' way. For example, let's see, the Colts lost to the Falcons, and was there anything else? Browns beat the Texans.
Yeah.
Jaguars lost to the Bucs. Yeah, I guess a lot went the Bills' way. except for the Dolphins pulled off a win, which, Bills fans would hope would go the other way. But also the Broncos lost to the Patriots. So, yeah, a lot of stuff went the Bills' way, and now it's looking pretty good for Buffalo. We still got to do business and close out the season here. Got a New England Patriots, who we had a sad upset to earlier in the season. We'll be playing New Year's Eve. I'll be at the game, and it's going to make for a long New Year's Eve. 1:00.
That could be Belichick's last game as a Patriots coach, right? Didn't they announce he wasn't coming back next year?
There's still 2 weeks left.
I thought next was the final week.
No, you got 2 because, we've got the Bills have New England and then Miami to close out the season. So, but you're right, Belichick. Well, it'll be his last time playing in Orchard Park at least. So, good riddance. I mean, the guy had a great career. But
you think he'll retire?
I think
he's done?
Instead of him being fired, I think he'll step down and, kind of sail off into the sunset. So, genius coach, but he had Tom Brady for almost
Except
2
for
decades.
All the cheating and the accusations of cheating
and Spygate all of that stuff.
The penalties for cheating and
what's the whole thing? If you're not cheating, you're not trying, or something like that. But hey, who knows? Steven, do you have any faith in your Bengals? I think there's like a 10% chance they make the playoffs.
Well, the Chiefs lost to the Raiders, so there's some hope for
that's true. This is true.
But
I've been using the New York Times calculator. Have you seen that at all?
No, I haven't.
It shows everyone's odds. So you have Steelers have a 12% chance, Bengals have a 19% chance. Basically, you're fighting a wild card battle against Indy, the Texans, the Raiders, and the Broncos. So, who knows? We'll see, man. Yeah. But anything else in sports? Oh, Ben, I got something for you. Have you seen the memes, the Tiger Woods memes, the big dog?
I haven't seen any of them recently, but I mean,
wasn't that fairly new? It was a week ago that it started blowing up all over the internet. It's basically him about to tee off, and he's got this caddy, and he just goes to the dude, puts his hand out he's gonna slap him up. He's like, "Big dog, let's get out there and do this today," or whatever it was. But they took all the meme creators just made a ton of freaking hilarious memes of Tiger slapping somebody up, saying "big dog." There's some funny ones out there, so check them out. Well, that's all I got for sports, man. You got anything?
I do not. That's about all I have.
So we're going to talk a bit about the 2023 recap today. Also, next week we'll be having Ken Adamo from DAT on with us to talk, the market from his perspective. Definitely going to pick his brain on what he thinks the 2024 landscape is going to look like. So definitely stay tuned for that one. The reason I thought about the market was I saw this morning there was a the Freight Waves newsletter that goes out. They sent out this thing that was showing one of the sonar, their analytics tool, the sonar. I'm trying to think what you'd call the metric that tracks contract versus spot rates on average throughout the U.S. And it showed that over the last week that basically spot rates took a surge, because the last almost 2 years now it's been flip-flopped, and it's shown that it's taken a surge. So I checked it against RateView, and it's different data. So I got conflicting reports, but either way, it made me think, where have all the rates between spot and contract, how have they trended since we started tracking this roughly last May? And what I have noticed, and if you go to RateView on DAT, whether you look at van, reefer, or flatbed, you kind of see the same thing, where the spot market has pretty much been at the bottom, if not slowly crawling out, for about 6 months now, whereas contract rates have just been coming down and down and down.
For sure. What are you looking at? You got a lane you're looking at in specific?
No, I just did the national average on RateView.
Yeah.
So if you're on there, you'll see the gap between them is definitely less than it was before. So if you go back to December of last year, van contract rates were at almost $3 a mile. They're down to $250 right now. Whereas, so they've dropped almost 50 cents. Contract rates dropped from 240 a year ago, or I'm sorry, spot rates dropped from 240 a year ago down to 206 by May, or by April 206. So they only dropped like 34 cents, and they're
Where are
actually
you seeing this? Hold on. I'm in the national. Oh, I'm looking at flatbeds. I think that's why.
hit Van. If you hit Van, and you'll see like the spot rates kind of like bottomed out in April, and they're actually higher now than they were in April. So really contract rates have come down. And I was thinking about, I'm like, why would that happen? And I almost think that these customers that went into contract rates they went to the contract markets because they were so worried about rates being so high before. I almost think that customers are pushing that downward. Right. So, but it's interesting to see that everyone's like, oh, we're, the worst isn't here yet. I think we've been in the worst, if not crawling out of it, for over 6 months now.
For sure. So, and it's, anecdotal. I can't seem to get this to switch from flatbed to van for some reason. But absolutely. I've talked to lots of managers at some of the bigger brokerages to mid-sized brokerages that are seeing this in bids and have been seeing it all year, right? Where they're like, I remember it was probably like June, July when I started hearing this from friends and colleagues that were just like, man, I'm working through these national bids. And they're like, somebody told me they were like, this is in June. Because I remember they were like 50 to 60% of the lanes that they saw. And they said, it was a Fortune 100 company, a name that kind of everybody would have recognized. And I don't know who the name of the company was either. I didn't ask. And they said, as far as vans go, he was like 60% of these lanes, the target rate on the bid, he was like, you couldn't cover load for this. He was like, maybe you get a truck on a backhaul, maybe. And he's like, that's 60%. You're talking hundreds of lanes, right? He's like, I can't even wrap my head around why and how they're doing this. He's like, they're clearly paper rates, which again, for listeners out there, they refer to paper rates as a number you put on a bid without any of intention of being able to actually get a truck for it, is what a paper rate is, right? It's
you're hoping and praying, but yeah,
it's a hope. And then if the market and you can get a truck for it, great. If not, you just give the loads back. Well, historically, right, in the market, if a shipper did that, right, they're going to get hugely penalized. And how they get penalized is if they push their contract rates too low, what happens is say 40 or 50% of the carriers that are all in this bid, however, the percentage of it, right? Whatever that is, half of the carriers are in there. They put in numbers that are that low. Well, as soon as the spot market is above that number, every carrier just all of a sudden their trucks are in the shop. They don't have a driver for that lane. Every excuse you've ever heard of is all the shipper hears, and they can't get a truck for it. Why? Opportunity cost, right? Hey, if I am going to tell a company, hey, I'll run this load for you for say $2 a mile all year. And then 2 weeks later, the spot market is I can get any load I want for $2.20 a mile. You're never picking that load up again. And that's the way the market works. But since the spot market has not been above the contract market for, like you said, at the very least a year to a year and a half, maybe longer now, the shippers can push these rates as far as they can without worry that a truck's just gonna never pick up their freight because they can get paid more in the market, right? And this is that pivotal moment, right, in the market that everybody's been talking about, because when it occurs, I think, and this is just my opinion, shippers are going to be in a huge amount of problems. They're going to end up seeing large portions of their contract freight flip to spot. Service is going to go into the garbage can, and they are going to be in the spot market for way more than they ever expected. And they're going to be at the mercy of every broker that they've been working with to get them any capacity for anything, because the trucks just aren't going to come and pick up their freight. And I think that's going to happen. When it happens, like we used to say it, like when I worked at TQL, there would be like messages that go out over Skype when the market would flip for produce. And you would see this every year because of the same economic scenario, right? Spot market is always and should always be more expensive than the contract market, because what? Like if you're going to get something delivered in 2 days or in 2 weeks, it's more expensive in a day, right? Same premise. And when the produce market would flip each individual region of the country, like we would all message each other. Like the big produce brokers would send out messages internally in the company and go like, hey, the market just flipped.
Blue Book Services is the resource you need if you're transporting fresh produce or lumber. Their online databases contain thousands of companies throughout the produce and lumber industry supply chains. You can easily search their databases to generate new sales leads. Blue Book's credit ratings help you avoid companies with high credit risk, and their team can help resolve disputed loads. To learn more, go to producebluebook.com or lumberbluebook.com and click Join today.
And you'd see Florida go outbound, $1.20 to $3.50, right? In like an hour, in 45 minutes, and like all the watermelons hitting, all whatever's hitting. And that's really what keeps shippers honest in bid processes, is they're terrified that if they overplay their hand, they get penalized and have to pay a big penalty for it. Since they've been upside down, they can kind of act with, what do they call it? Like free reign or like no penalty, whatever they call that, when you can do whatever you want and there are no repercussions.
There's no recourse. Yeah.
No recourse. That's the way they've been able to operate since they got slaughtered during the pandemic. But when that changes, I think this is going to see the market go back to where we need it much faster than anyone kind of expects. And I think this is going to move all the leverage from all the carriers that don't have it now right back into their corner. And I think that's really obviously what everyone's hoping for. But
so you think it's going to bounce back like a whiplash almost?
Yeah, but I think the two things, right? Because we know that the shippers are doing that. Like I have not talked to anybody. In fact, every bid I've worked on for every larger company, I saw the same thing all year last year. But the big number that nobody knows is if the demand for trucks goes up at the same time, then it's whiplash. And that just means we, as a country, we're going to buy more things. So timing, right? They talk about the soft landing of the economy. If they land the economy in the way they've expected in the past 2 weeks, right, with all the Fed announcements and everything that sits as of the end of the year where the market is, barring anything that we don't know is going to happen, right, which is going to happen anyway, but just say that everything stays the same for the most part. If they can reduce interest rates in the second quarter, and maybe even reduce them again into the third quarter, you're going to see not only consumer spending usually pick up, you'll see housing pick back up right at a time for spring, which is going to pick up all the building materials. You're going to see renovations and those things pick up. At the same time, companies that have kept inventories low since the pandemic because they had to keep lots of inventory, which by the way, costs a lot of money. And if you got to borrow money from a bank, that inventory is costing you profits. So they've kept inventories low and we've been buying things, but it's been kind of a give and take. It's nothing crazy. But if that all changes overnight at the same time, like I think you could absolutely see something similar to what you saw. Maybe not like the ELDs, but I think you're going to see the market moving it. If that timing happens at the same time, I think you're going to see it spike, and I think you're going to see chaos.
So I want to read. I thought of a couple things. I'm going to talk about tender rejection, but I'm going to come back to that in a second because first I wanted to read off. If you guys don't get Freight Caviar's newsletter, it's good. Sign up for it. The one that came out this week or today featured a bunch of predictions. Mine was in there too, and I'll talk about it in a second. But Tim from Ascent TMS, I was dying laughing. So basically, Paul from Freight Caviar went to 7 folks that are in the industry and said, like, what's your prediction for 2024 for the freight market? And first he listed Tim's, and it says, hold on tight. 2024 is going to suck even more than 2023. Profit margins are down, rates are down, employee counts are down, and net business formation is down. By the end of 24, we'll see things getting better. Conserve your cash, shed debt, fire non-profitable customers. So he kind of took like the doomsday approach, but there is some good to be taken out of this, and we'll talk a little bit more about customer-facing stuff later on in this episode. But he said fire non-profitable customers, and we've had many like year-end episodes where we talked about how to get your business right moving into the next year, and that's one of the things that we've often talked about is there's opportunity in any market, but you need to be making sure that you're capitalizing on what's good for you and getting rid of what's bad for you, right? And he mentioned save cash, get rid of debt, but fire the non-profitable customers. How many customers do you have right now that are headaches to you, right? So I want to like point that out as you move into next year. Your focus and energy should be focused on good opportunity that's profitable for you, and not those low margin customers that, you know, they've consistently had
For sure.
low rates, and it's just headache after headache, because that takes up time. So
when it's hard to figure out where those are, right? Especially if you're in a market where I think everyone's trying to fight to bring in whatever dollars they can. I think there's probably a lot of people that will listen to this going like, what do you mean? I'm barely breaking even, or I'm barely able to hit what I want with the income. How in the world am I going to get rid of customers in a time where I need more money? Is the common response to this, right? This reminds me of, it was a story. It was somebody that worked at TQL before I was there, but my boss told me this one. It always stuck with me, right? And here's why I think this matters a lot, but I think it also is a good story that points us out to everybody and really drives your point home. And it was, so when you work there, right, basically you can only get more support, more staff once you make more money. Like you literally can't just decide to hire. Now in the real world, you could probably hire a little sooner or later, right, on your choice. But the reality is it's still kind of the same thing, because if you hire too soon, eventually it'll catch up to you. If you hire too late, it could damage you in the same way. So let's just say that everybody shouldn't hire until they hit a certain benchmark, right?
sure.
And there it was, okay, you don't get an employee to help you. It means you manage all of your business, just like an agent. Get your own customers, find your own customers, prospect them, cover your own loads, check call them, make sure the money's paid, everything cradle to the grave. You don't get your first person to help you until you have exceeded a 12-week average of $4,000 a week in profit. Okay.
So we're talking, that's almost 20, it's like $25K a month in GP. Yeah.
Yes. So you got to do 16,000 a month in gross profit.
Oh, I'm sorry, 16. Bad math.
Or $4,000 a week, right, in order to get your first employee, right? And the story he told me was a broker that hustled and made sales calls and was, by everyone's definition, a good broker, right? The story really where it matters though is he's like, he'd been here for like a year and a half, 2 years, right? So he's been able to keep a job. He made it through the firing and, was able to hang on and really believed he was like on his way to succeed. The problem was he was working with customers that were never really going to pay him any more than they had to, right? And an example of this was he was basically working with lots of different load lists. Like he might have had 10 customers and it was all, we call it like jump ball freight. The lowest truck gets the load and then you run it, right? Well, in that scenario, with one person to help you, right? Like he's only really able to do about 30 to 40 loads a week before he'd run out of time. Meaning literally there's just no more hours in the day. You could work an extra couple hours every day to prospect a little more, maybe show up an hour earlier. But at the end of the day, like you could really maybe only squeeze maybe another 4 or 5 loads because his average margins, right, were only like 11%, 12%. So he's, short freight, low dollar amounts, low percentage, because the commodities he was moving, right, were like lumber and some of these building materials where they're just never, ever going to pay any more than they have to move it because it never really has to get there any sooner than it needs to, right?
Yep.
So there's no urgency of time. It's not a risky commodity. They're low value. It's just, it'll get there when it gets there. Everybody's okay. So on the outside, it looks like this guy's succeeding, right? But the reality is like, if you know the business, you knew that he was just dying on the vine, as they say, right? Like he was never going to grow any bigger. His only choice was to just sustain until he was tired and eventually quit because you can't grow anymore. And the problem is exactly what Nate pointed out. He's got enough customers that he's busy all day. He's moving loads all day and feels like he's doing the job, and he is doing the job, but he wasn't doing it in a way that he was ever going to be able to grow because he never had time to prospect new customers because all of his time went to servicing existing ones. And here's the kicker. His book didn't change for 6 months to a year, and he wasn't ever making enough money to actually earn a commission. He was making enough money to pay TQL to keep his seat, and everybody at the company's happy because he's kicking 75% of the profit back into the company. But for him personally, he was never really earning a commission. So he's basically just earning his base salary and making the company more money, and everybody's happy but him. And the hard lesson was Jason, the guy who was his manager, who was the guy who trained me, was my manager. She was like, I had to have a conversation with him. He's like, look, it's in your best interest to fire at least 25% of your customers. He's like, I would suggest you fire half or all, because even though I know you're vested in them and you spend a ton of time and all these relationships, they're never going to get you to where you want to go, to earning 10K a month or whatever that goal is, right? And that's how the story ended. Was he fired all of his customers, started back from scratch, and was able to build customers that now he could see where the value was and which ones he didn't want to work with. You first kind of need to make the mistake to know who you shouldn't work with, to bang your head against the wall, to learn what you don't want to do. But again, to me, I always think of that when I'm spending a lot of time with a customer and there's not really much return right now, and I don't see it changing in the future. If there's no reason for them ever to change what they're paying or doing, even when the market changes, then you've got the wrong customer, and you need to spend more time finding a better customer than servicing the ones that aren't going to get you where you need to go.
You made me think about one of the guys at our company at Pierce. He's not brokering freight anymore. He went on to bigger and better things with another passion in his life. But he did the load list thing a couple of years ago and was able to be successful with it until the market did what it did earlier last year. So being that we're a margin-based business, he could make decent money, 10% margins, when rates were double, right? But when the market shifted and rates got compressed, that 10%'s a lot less money. And he's like, yeah, it's time to move on. Like, he's like, I kind of rode the wave while I could. And he's like, but I got this other passion that I want to go into. And that was that. So, but yeah.
But that's a good point. I want to run with that too, because this is something else that I think is not talked about a lot, but is also one of the reasons why brokers end up in that scenario in the first place, right? Like when this market flips, and it inevitably will, right? Maybe it's when someone else thinks it, maybe it's when maybe who knows when this will occur, but it will occur, right? That is inevitable, right? Whether this market starts going up again, beginning of this year, middle of this year, or as Tim pointed out, into 2025. It will happen, right? When that market goes up, things will change and everybody's going to run to the spot market where all the money is, right? The difference is the brokers that will have a career in this, that will outlive whatever that short-term market uptick is, whether that's 6 months or 8 months or 2 weeks, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If you want to be able to survive in an up and a down market and have an actual career in this, right? Yes, it's great when the opportunities will come when this happens, and you should capitalize on them because they are temporary. They will also not last forever. But you've got to also take a step back and go, how can I get some lower profitable lanes in with this customer that, opportunity cost is I could probably make more with other people right now, but you know what? That will stay in an up and a down market, right? And that's what we talk about, not just living in the spot market. If you just live in the spot market, as the saying goes, like you will die by it, because when you're in a market like this, if you only can make money when the spot market is firing, as soon as that market flips, you will starve to death and will have no prospects to find and no opportunities to open a door. When the doors are all open and everybody needs help from all the brokers in the spot market, you've got to give enough. And what I mean by that is run some lower profit lanes for these customers too, with some carriers that can run these all year and in a lower market, so that you've got some consistent freight that maybe is running at 10 or 11%, and maybe your other freight's at 26% in a hot market, right? But you want that lower margin freight mixed in with your high profit spot freight, because that's what's going to sustain you when the market inevitably comes back down, right? It does this all day long, and it just astonishes me that everybody's like shocked as if it never happens again. It's like getting on a merry-go-round, and every time you got back to the beginning, you were surprised. Like, you'd laugh at that, but like that's literally what happens, right?
Yep.
Oh my God, here we are again. I never thought this was going to occur. It's going to happen, and then it's going to be over, and we're going to be back in this market. So like, if you realize that, you will likely make different decisions with your customers and the bids that you're going to be doing into the beginning of next year, right? It's not all just kill when you can and then starve when you can't. Like there are other ways to survive in both types of markets.
And ideally, we talk about this a lot, is diversifying your book, and that's one way to do it. It's going to be really important. It could be that diversification can look a lot of different ways. What you don't want to have is, one customer controlling your destiny, right? So in the case that you just mentioned, like load lists, right? One type of customer is controlling someone's destiny in that case. It could be that you have one customer who's 95% of all your revenue. That's very dangerous as well. It could be that you diversify your commodities so they're not as flexible throughout the year if you have some different seasonal stuff, right? If like we've got a guy that does watermelons and like he's pretty much just off right now because he has nothing to do until coming into the late winter when that stuff starts to pick up around the country. So it's a matter of preference. If you want to have a stable, long-term, year-round work and a career, you've got to find some way to balance that out. So I do want to, unless you have anything else on this, I want to shift back to the market stuff. So I pulled it up on Sonar, the tender rejection index. So we talked about this in the peak of COVID when tender rejections were upwards of like 30%. And when we say tender rejection, this is when a contract awarded lane is canceled by a carrier or by a broker.
Tired of struggling to find accurate rates and the right carriers for your freight? With DAT1, you can access more than 500 million posted loads and trucks every year. That's 3 times more capacity than any other load board. Plus, their integrated freight management system makes it easy to cover loads 24/7. They have the most trusted network of carriers, brokers, and shippers in the country. You'll get real-time rates on every lane so you know exactly how much a shipment will cost before you commit to it. Plus, you get instant access to top bids from qualified carriers around the country. Get 10% off your first year of DAT1 when you visit the link in the show notes.
All right, typically by a motor carrier, though. So what will happen is, let's say the carrier, let's say in late 2019, carrier fills out a bid and takes the load for $250 a mile. They get awarded that lane, and then you fast forward into 2020, right, when it's insane. Rates are double that, right? Of course they're going to cancel. They're going to reject that $2.50 awarded bid and go get spot freight for double the price. So when we see tender rejection up, that's when your spot market is going to be seeing a lot of activity. So if you've got Sonar, check it out. The ticker is OTRI.USA. It's Outbound Tender Rejection Index, and that's domestic truckload in the U.S. So the average tends to be like 5 to 10% is like somewhat healthy. That's what you would consider as like a normal market. And it peaked to almost 30, and then it dropped off in early first half to middle of 22, which we all know that's when the market started to shift. And it got as low as, let's see here if I can get the actual number. It looks like it's about 1 to 2% earlier this year. And it has since climbed back. It's almost at 6% now. So that tender rejection index is heading in the right direction. And there's going to be a couple of reasons why that happens, right? As rates go up, even if they slightly go up, carriers that have contracted rates at a lower amount are going to cancel those rates. They're going to reject the tender and go, get that freight in the spot market. Or it could be they went out of business, right? Or what do you got, Ben?
Or if rates stay the same and the shippers offer below or farther below even what the average is, that also causes rejections. So if the rates aren't changing, but the shippers, like we were just talking about, overplay their hand and they push rates below what anybody actually can run them for, but they're willing to send a bid in for it, they believe that they got all these trucks, like you said, committed to all this freight. And the reality is the trucks just go, yeah, it looked good on the paper, but you know what? I'm just going to go take the load for an extra 10 cents a mile on the spot market, and then they don't pick them up. I think a main reason why that rejection rate is going up is because of what the shippers are doing in the bids. And I think that's also why the contract rate, not the spot rate, the spot rate isn't coming up to meet the contract rate. The contract rate is being pushed down to where the spot market rate is, right? Yeah. And now it's getting pushed below it. And to me, that shows that the shippers are the ones that are overplaying their hands. And also, by the way, for all the carriers screaming at us from all this other content, like that's literally why rates are where they are. It has nothing to do with brokers. It's shippers literally pushing the market as far as they can because that's what they're always going to do until they can't push it anymore.
Yep. So another thing there too is one way in which the spot market will come up, because you mentioned it in a scenario where it stays the same, all else equal. The caveat there would be if your supply demand, um, basically like your supply demand graph or chart for demand to ship and supply of trucks, if that goes, if it ends up in an opposite place that it is now, you will see spot rates go up because there's gonna be less trucks available compared to the amount of freight that
Yep.
has to be moved. Now, how would that happen? Well, you can have capacity contract by companies going out of business, operators exiting the trucking fleet or trucking force, and the demand for shipping can go up if, like you mentioned earlier, Fed interest rates drop down and people have, companies have more money to spend to reinvest into their business. Consumers have more money to, buy goods and do stuff like that. So, and I want to read to you what my prediction was in Freight Caviar's little bit here. I said, I've seen rates slowly start to creep up over the past couple of months, and I expect it will continue into 24, with companies continuing to close. The gap between supply and demand will shrink and lead us back to a sense of normalcy, but not overnight. I had more to say. That's just what he wrapped it up to. But I also mentioned that the biggest determining factor is going to be the Fed interest rates and the presidential election in next November. I think those will be your two big ones. I think your Fed interest rates are going to be the more near to us as far as like how quickly that could happen. Because we kind of are at this soft landing. A lot of people predicted a recession this year, and if you look at like the market, if you're invested, like dude, like
all-time highs.
S&P is up like 20% this year. Like no one saw that coming.
Both of them are at all-time highs, right?
Yep. Yeah, I mean it's wild. So something's working obviously somewhere, but we're seeing obviously the kind of the short end of the stick in freight. But hey, the companies that are still here, whether you're an asset-based trucking company or a freight brokerage, non-asset-based 3PL, we're all operating off of less money right now. And if you're still swimming and you're growing like some of us are, it's going to be even that much more fruitful when the market gets to a better place. And I think we're headed there right now. I've personally been seeing it in our company's data since like about 6 months ago. Obviously, I mentioned Sonar, and they're reporting the co-op of companies that submit data to them. I don't know what DAT. Yeah, no, I mean we referenced DAT too, right? And they've got over 200 data sources that Ken mentioned, and we'll pick his brain on it next week. But we're seeing that shift where you can either argue that it's not getting any lower, or you can make the argument that we're starting to creep up. You just can't make the argument that, the bottom's not here yet. I don't believe you can make that argument at least. So
Agreed.
It's been a wild year though, man. I was talking to a guy earlier today, and I was like, how's business been? He's like, he's in a totally different company. But he does 3PL and warehousing and stuff. He's like, it's been a crazy year. He's like, I'm starting to debate if it was the right choice this year to open up a physical office space and hire all those new folks. But like, and the reality is he'll be in a much better position spot when he's got a fully trained staff all under one roof when that demand kicks back up. Because what you don't want to do is, you're running very lean right now, and then all of a sudden, boom, market changes, you get a lot more business, and then it's just you, right? And you don't have any help. You didn't pre-plan for any of this. Don't go overboard and hire too quickly. But I think those are some interesting, important things to consider, is that, aiming high in your steering, as you would call it as a driver. But it's basically like thinking long-term, right? Have that vision out there of, where you want to be and what needs to be true for you to be able to get there. So, elsewhere, diesel rates, right? So if you think about this throughout the year, I mean, it's kind of weird to think back like 12 months ago, but that's kind of what we do at the end of the year. Are you looking at them right now, or can I give you a pop question and see what your brain remembers?
You can ask me.
All right. Do you think diesel rates are higher or lower than they were 12 months ago?
I'm going to say they're definitely lower. I also think they're lower because I think that's one of the main reasons why also inflation has come down recently too. That the Fed didn't necessarily have much to do with, but like gas prices and oil prices are down. So I'm going to guess that
Yep.
diesel's also down.
Yeah, so if you run if you were to look at the chart on DAT, it looks like a I don't remember if it's sine, cosine, or tangent, but it's one of those curves where like it goes down, comes back up, and then goes back down. So like it started at 471 a gallon a year ago, dropped down to 380 middle of the year, then went back up to 456 in September, and is now down at 397. So we've dropped about 80 cents, which is about a 20% decrease in fuel prices in the last 12 months. So that again is going to add into your overall prices, obviously. So and also when I reference the spot rates before, how they've been flat or growing, that's including fuel. So when we've got fuel prices down, but rates are either the same or going up, that means that your line haul is going up. Okay,
Means your rate
so
went
that's
up.
my other argument that I have. I like to stand on there is that even while gas prices have gone down, which you would think would lower your rates overall, your spot rates with fuel have gone up, even if just slightly. So I think flatbed's the exception to that argument. Reefer and van definitely showed it though. So, yeah. So you got anything else on the market or the year overall? Any big? What kind of milestones do we have? Oh, we had our 200th episode a few months ago, right? That was big. Big
New
big
website
project
launched
with
by the end of the year.
DAT. So if you're on the asset side with DAT, you'll be able to see some new education from us that is being offered through them sometime next year that we worked on with them throughout this past year. A year of double brokerage and fraud, man. It was a wild one, that's for sure.
That was probably one of the biggest things I think this year, standout wise, was just how prevalent fraud was and
exactly
how much it's been in the news.
So, well, I mean, we kind of talked about what to do with your book of business a little bit ago, but I do want to talk about you had I want you to tell a story that we talked about off air, and this is just about how to go the extra mile with a customer, and there's a lot to be said about it. But talk about that a little bit, about little feedback you got from one of your shippers earlier.
Yeah, I was talking with her actually earlier today. That's why I made a note about it. And we were talking, I was asking, what was coming on. And actually the context of the conversation was, I think I had like something like 12 loads that we had scheduled that got canceled and then got rescheduled and we couldn't work them in. And she was like, yeah, I want to be able to get you a few more loads. She's like, in fact, I have, and we didn't know that they ship containers either. And she was like, oh yeah, we got like 20 of these containers we bring in every month. Can you take a look at them? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And I didn't say anything about it outside of that. But what she said to me was, she was like, yeah, you know what? She was like, I try to give you as much of this as I can. And she's like, I'd like to get you worked into some more of our business. I said, yeah, I really appreciate that. Whatever else we can do to help you. And then she said something, and this is what we were talking about off air, where she goes, you're like the only person I work with that like actually spends the time to talk to me. And I go, what do you mean? I was like, love chatting with you. I'm like, what do you mean spend the time to chat with you? She goes, everyone else just sends an email. And she's like, yeah, I know. I send emails too. And it's not like they're not more efficient when you need things done. She's like, but literally you're like the only person that will just kind of ask me how my day was and then just listen. And I'm like, well, yeah, I'm curious. I wanted to know how your day was. I want to know how your holiday was, whatever. And I kind of made it seem not awkward by, making it not seem like that was a big deal because I didn't really think it was. But after the call, and I was really thinking, I'm like, that's what we talk about on this show all the time, right?
Yep.
These little things, right? And when they come up and somebody points it out to me, it's what made me notice it, right? But that's the competitive advantage, right? The reason her other brokers are losing business and have been all year to me, and we just started working with her 6-7 months ago, I don't know, middle of this year. And again, in the time when everybody else says you can't get shippers, we started working with them and we're getting more and more of their business. And she told us why. It's because of this. Like on a Monday morning, I ask her how her weekend was and listen, and I care and actually have a conversation about it, right? Like I can tell you what they did for Christmas when her kids came over. And I mean, her kids are almost our age. In fact, they're probably closer to Steven's age than our kids' age, Nate. But the funny thing is, right, like it's really just simple things you would do with a coworker, right? It's just a person to a person. Like you just listen, you're there, you care about what's important to them outside of work, and you make friends with them. And everyone thinks that's like a waste of time, or that like you're too busy because you've got other things to do, like cover a load. But the reality is like, this is the glue, right?
Yeah.
It is the value of every 3PL in the country. It isn't rates. It's not contracts. It's not carriers. It's that. It's just that intangible thing of one person likes working with another person because
we talk about the know, like, and trust spectrum, right? Like you have to have all three of those to do business with somebody typically, right? And to cross from the know to the like is done by using the glue, like you just mentioned, right? Rapport building, relationship building, going from just being in someone's public life to being somewhat let into their private life. Like, you know, you find out about family and what they did for the holidays and stuff like that. And that makes somebody like you and then ultimately trust you. So I think that's very, very, it's huge. That's why there are transactional freight brokers who do load lists that jump ball freight. If you want to get outside of that, you're going to have to change your approach and how you communicate and interact with your customers. And that's going to be exactly just like what you just explained there, for sure.
Well, and again, for people that are new in prospecting, right? And you're like, well, I don't have anybody that like even talks to me yet. It's using every single thing as an opportunity to talk to somebody is really the only strategy, right? They send you an email. Hey, can you get me a quote on this? Pick up the phone and call them. Even if you know the answers, like I'll just pick up the phone and be like, hey, I just want to confirm this is a van load, right? This is the same as the other ones. There's nothing odd about this one. Just want to make sure pickup and the delivery are the same. Both first come, first serve. Nothing strange with this. I know there's nothing strange with it. I just use that as an excuse to call the person. And it mostly just gives me some more information about them. How's their day going? Hey, while they're there, they're probably going to tell me how their morning was. They're likely to tell me if they've got something else they might need help with. Or maybe they just want to vent about what happened last night and it's early in the day. And it's like, yeah, just had a rough morning, car broke down. And maybe they just want to get that off their chest. And that just listening right there, right, means that 2 or 3 hours later when they need help with something else, who do you think the most likely person is for them to send that load to? If they've got to make a choice, it's coming to me. Because exactly. I talked to them and I spent 2 minutes asking them how their morning was. Hey, how'd things go last night? Anything else? It doesn't have to be some crazy speech or some big, extravagant thing. You just talk to people and ask them how they're doing, and then listen. And if you do that more, they will want to talk to you more, and you'll learn more about whether or not there's opportunities to work on, right?
Yep. That's exactly right.
It's really just that simple in most cases.
Wow. So 2023 in the books, man. I like it. We got anything else to wrap up the year here?
I think that's about it. I'm anxious to dig in next week with Ken, talk a little bit about rates and get into some of the numbers around things. But
agreed. That'll be a good one. Make sure you tune in for it, everybody. All right. Well, good deal. Good year and good deal. That'll put a bow on 2023. Happy New Year, everybody. Hope you guys all have a fun and safe New Year's celebration. Any final thoughts, Ben?
Whether you believe you can or believe you can't, you're right.
And until next time, Happy New Year's and go Bills. That wraps up this episode of Freight 360. Check out the show notes for links to anything that we've referenced on this episode. And make sure to visit us online at freight360.net to see our entire library of episodes, videos, blogs, and more.
And make sure to check us out on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel for daily and weekly tips and content. And if you'd like your question answered on the show, fill out the Contact Us form on our site, and we'll see you next week.